my middle class looks like is not the pretentious one that we have at the moment. But being bougie is not what makes you middle. Having all the basics of in life is middle class. And then, having access to good education. You have a very educated group of people who need to understand that their education is a privilege, but it is one of the biggest investments. Use that education. Just stop being funny.
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power. Use it. Here, you will be so shocked at what you can do. People don't even use their education for anything. And education is everything from street smart to these office jobs that you get. Education is a very big thing. It's a key factor because what education does is it doesn't just teach you science and math and what. It teaches you etiquette. It teaches you how to deal with people. It teaches you how to deal with anger issues. It teaches you how to deal with the outside world. It teaches you so much more. That's what education is. Being able to float within a system and make it work.
Always tell people, I'm shocked at how much information people carry in their heads. You just move around with all this knowledge. And I'm always sort of blown away.
Build your country. No one will do it for you.
Welcome everybody to another episode of the podcast on Uganda. Today's segment is the segment on sectors. We're going to still be finding out what fuels the wheels of Uganda's economy. And today we have an artist, a designer, and he's a natural, Prosper Byamungu. Prosper, having such a name, it would be nice to know, have you gotten any benefits from that name? And also, can we look at how Uganda can be prosperous, especially in achieving that middle class economy by 2040? Welcome to the podcast, Prosper.
Thanks, Aggie.
He's a natural artist. I've gotten to admire some of the beautiful spaces he has worked on. He's trying to help us reimagine how we can design, how we can construct. And I wonder how that is going for you.
Well, it's interesting. It has its ups and downs. There's a lot of teaching. There's a lot of learning. And the truth is, people always talk about unlearning.
Yes.
Very difficult to unlearn. If you've been doing something a long time or you've been doing it a certain type of way, waking up and dropping it and starting something else is difficult. It's difficult mainly because you don't know what you don't know. Even when you know what's supposed to happen, sometimes you're too afraid to try it because what if it fails? So a lot of people are more afraid of failure than anything else. And in this space of design, if you don't start changing, you get stuck. It's very easy to get stuck at a certain level and then never leave it just because you're comfortable.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially with design, to paint a more vivid picture for the listener. What was it like in the 80s in Uganda, 90s, and today? What have the trends been like in design?
We've always had design way before colonialism and we lived in spaces that were fully 100% well designed because they were designed as colonization happened and the interaction with the outside world. You start picking up other elements, we keep adding in. That evolution is necessary. Design is not static. If you look at different design elements of anything, you'll find that it's influences from many places. So there's not one original, unique design that you can actually point at. That's the very first thing that people need to understand. When you look at Uganda, we always use natural materials. The evolution of those materials is that we tended to adopt more outside influences than actually sticking to the ones that we've always used. There was a reason behind them. The climate, sourcing them here, there was no cost. Because they were natural materials you could pick from your own farm. So there was never like trade in terms of actual cash. But if you needed material and you could get it from a neighbor, there was always some form of barter. The idea was for community building. It was never for actual commercial purposes. The commercialization of materials and design also came with outside influence. This idea of indoctrination where we are told that something from outside is better than what we have always known took root so deeply to the point that from the way we dress to the way we interact and the homes we build, we were trying as much as possible to be like the outsiders who are coming in, whether it was the Arabs, whether it was Indians, whether it was the British. If you look around, you'll find that all those influences are all over this country. From the Dukas that you see on the road, that's an actual design that took over. When the Indians came in, the idea was you have a space where you have a frontage and the back is where you actually live. It's part of one house. So we left our communities of all these small huts, which now, if you look around, by the way, you will see you've just gone back to the same thing, just differently. and at a much higher cost. We have to understand that evolution of design across the country basing on who came into the country and how they influenced it and what we were aspiring to. Because at the end of the day, once you're used to running as a community where money is not a thing, then all of a sudden people come in and they influence you to believe that money is everything. Somehow you start aspiring towards that. And once you start aspiring towards that, you will take the habits, you will take the design, you will take the elements of their culture, you'll take it up and make it your own.
That's true.
So influence is a real thing.
And you could see that a lot of people would want to achieve that status, but today people are going back to the old traditions, mixing soil with mud just to build like a banda.
Basically fancy sitting space.
And now you see people going back to our roots.
That's peer pressure. So if you look at what's happening in the world of social media, all of a sudden you're having foreigners talking about living with the earth and organic food. Your food is already organic. You don't have to label it organic in order for it to be organic. It's labeled organic in places where they're already doing so much commercial farming that you have to identify these things. So we are just carrying labels and bringing them back here. And then when someone says that, oh no, I'm building an earth house, you were already doing it a long time ago. You don't have to then start labeling it that now. Just do it as it is. So it's influence of language as well. How we describe things really changes our perception of them. So someone cannot bring it back to you and you're already doing it, and then somehow you pick it up and assume that's what makes it cool. So we are using language, it's weaponized. That's the truth. If someone tells you you're from a third world country, the origin of the word third world has no bearing to what it actually means now. But because someone used it very specifically to identify a group of people and then call them something, somehow they carried it on. And it is such a demeaning thing. And somehow you keep using it on yourselves in order to demean yourself, to say that they are better than us, which is not true. The idea is that we need to stop adopting these cultures and ideas and words that are coined from somewhere. I'm not saying that don't deal with the realities. The world changed. While we were not very commercial like that before, we are now in a very capitalist world where everything is commercialized. Whether it's design, food, agriculture, whatever it is that's not stuck to the ground will be commercialized, including the ground on which it sits anyway.
I mean, people are fighting for oceans.
People fight for everything, you know. You live in a time where you can commercialize any idea, where you say that water should not be a public resource, it should be privatized, then we can sell it to the people, which is what happens. All this bottled water, you could get water anywhere, but somehow you will go and buy water every single day. Why?
Well, it's purified, it's natural.
In fact, even the bottles it comes in are now very well designed. You like the tactility of.
Have you seen the water that comes from the clay pot?
Yeah.
It has a beautiful aroma.
Exactly. And we don't want you to have that because then you're not paying them money. Not that I'm against commercialization of things, because ideally, I will always look at large commercial entities. If handled well, used for the good of the people, they're like stewards. They're able to collect and use that to build and distribute wealth if they're doing what they're supposed to. But we know that's not what always happens. Things are meant to keep people in a certain type of way. I have an issue with it.
I feel like Prosper has mentioned the design over 10 times in this conversation. I wonder, in this rethinking of design, you also talked about influence. Do you own Brown Street?
Yes, I do.
The way you're rethinking design here in Uganda, but also Kenya, isn't it?
Yes, we are basically working towards to be a proper multinational across Africa.
So working in Uganda, Kenya, as far as I could see, what opportunities do you see based on the influence we talked about earlier? What are you guys talking about right now in your ecosystem?
First of all, we focused on building innovation hubs, things like Innovation Village and Motive. We did that very specifically because those innovation hubs are breeding places for creativity. The influence I was talking about, it's a way to let people have free thought because they're in the same space. As long as you can cause certain conversations to happen, not by you actually starting them, but by you getting creatives in the same place.
Yes.
What ends up happening is the nice chain reaction where everyone get their ideas validated by each other, by their own peers.
Absolutely.
If everyone is working from home, you barely meet. And because of that, even if you have an instant idea, you tend not to follow it through. You tend not to even have anyone to bounce it off of. But as long as you're in a public space where there's someone who probably does what you do, someone who has been successful to a certain level, even if it's not in the same sector, per se, design is design. Yeah. Whether you're a fashion designer, you're an architect, the result is literally the same. You're just creating a product that is usable by human beings. But that was the starting point, just pushing that, and I was very specific about doing it for a period of time. From there, it was also a space of experimentation. I could do whatever I wanted in terms of design. There were no limitations. You get a project and they're defunct old warehouses, and you turn that into an innovation hub with containers, very specific to why we're using them as well, to fill the space. But the idea was to open people's minds to the fact that there are possibilities of using materials that are not the usual brick and mortar. There's so many other ways of designing the same space. But then there's also bringing life to spaces people have given up on. They looked at a storage space, then you turn it into a new public space, be used for something else. So, as specific in terms of looking at urban regeneration, a lot of places in the city die, and then no one ever goes back to rescue them, especially because they're privately owned. And sometimes, even if they're government owned, there can be another use without having to break it down. So what we were specific about, and as we did that, we evolved into now going back to the vernacular. Vernacular meaning you start thinking about the country and local in terms of production, what you think people should be looking at very specifically. So if you're seeing how the economy of Uganda is set up, it's a lot of agriculture, a lot of tourism, all of that stuff that is not very technological. And yet it's set up in such a way that it's almost self-sustaining. You have tourism spaces, people will come. Now, why we were very interested in tourism in the first place was, there's a whole lot of eco talk around. A language that I was speaking about earlier when I said that we use language very interestingly. As long as you label something with a certain word and then you promote that word then tends to sound true and important. That's the thing about tourism. There's always talk of the ecological piece and conservation.
That's also a conversation in construction with a gentleman here, and he was telling us they were building a World Bank building, and they needed them to follow specific specs or guidelines for the building to be green.
Yes. Of course, things like saying green building, I mean, at least they tried, but some of them fail. That's a simple truth. And others work up to a certain level, and then some others really work. As long as the country is growing a certain direction, it's important for us to start rethinking certain things and materials that we use, reasons for setting up some of these spaces. Because we build a whole lot of white elephants. Everyone just comes up with an idea and says, build this, and just puts it there. No one ever does a feasibility. No one ever understands why they're building what they're building. So that copycat mentality of if Agi has done it and it has been successful, I'm going to do that exact thing. But you're trying to copy a blueprint from something that you have no idea about. So the idea of going into tourism and ecologies was like stepping back in time. Everyone in Uganda who is trying to get modern, the corporate world is growing bigger and bigger, and more housing is needed. We have tended to now build more extremely modern with modern materials, imported materials. The one industry that still decided to stay in the old age where buildings were actually put together with sustainable materials is tourism. Because someone from New York, you're not going to show them a hotel. They're from concrete. They don't want to go back to concrete. So now they prefer to come to understand how the locals lived. They want to do it in luxury. You understand?
And then also should need to accommodate that.
So now that's what the lodges do. The more natural materials you have, the more eco-friendly or the more stars you get, the more recommended. But interestingly, that is the one thing that is still keeping culture alive in terms of what actual normal building construction looked like during the olden days.
I like that you bring up this fact. We also had on the podcast, they were founders of a Moringa product. He said what mattered most was design, because for the brand to ever become the way it was so successful, he credited it to the fact that they put a lot of thought to the design. And now you speak about how we're copying and pasting other buildings or the ones that were there in the 90s or the 80s. However, if you think about it today and your work with Brown Stride and how you're trying to rethink how we are designing, what opportunities are there for us to rethink how we design?
Okay. So first of all, there's a lot of people doing experimentation, different small companies. And I believe that it's a challenge for us as Ugandans to partner with people, and it's one of our downfalls. But that aside, being able to partner with many of these small companies which are doing different technologies, and it ends up helping in putting together some good concepts, some new concepts. Because I mean, as Brown Street, I'm not going to do everything. I can only experiment with this and that. But I can put together a project that brings these ideas together, and then I'm able to showcase what the result looks like, which is what I'm actually doing at the moment. For almost every project that we have ever done is because we always get a chance to experiment with one thing, so we can showcase what it actually is possible.
And that is always good for business, like how people want to work with agencies because they have more experience, more exposure than more in-house. And actually corporations, international organizations love to see that you're cooperating with other people in your sector to bring the project to life. Because that's where the innovation is. You can't know everything. We spend a lot of time on research and development actually because it's necessary in order for you to further some of these technologies. So when I'm looking at preserving these technologies, because I want to go back in the past, it's because I want to make them better as we move towards the future instead of creating more and more materials that are more synthetic. And then we start complaining about greenhouse gases, and then all of a sudden climate change is such a real thing. You're assisting it just because you keep thinking that the guys who are talking oil and gas and the electric cars, electric vehicles are the ones who are having the conversation is with the people themselves. Being able to change mindsets up to that level fast, going upwards, because corporations will do what they want. They can doctor documents if they want to, and they'll tell you we are compliant, but it doesn't mean the person who is affected is probably at the grassroots. For me, the main factor that I look at as a company is, again, influence. But the influence I'm talking about is that I want the person at the grassroots to look at the material that they should be using right now, which they don't have pride in. Break it down.
I want them to actually have pride in their materials and understand that just because you're called a villager doesn't mean that's what it is. No, it's not. Your hat is fantastic. Hats have always been the most fantastic ideas, but jokes about them are such... They're so heinous. Everyone has to have lived in art in order to understand why it worked the way it worked. It is as natural as they come. Materials like, round earth, basically soil. Just use the soil below your feet, put it in a house. There are so many houses, hundreds of years old, built. And if you ever have to demolish it, it will go back exactly where it used to be. Because we adapted so many things that were so toxic. Things like asbestos. Even now, asbestos is still a problem in the world. Getting rid of it is hard, caused a whole lot of problems, the health problems. You even have to have a permit to take it down. You understand? So, I'm not saying that it's bad, but it's taken away so much from culture. And design basically has cultural elements that if you lose them, you literally will have no identity. I love artists. I admire the fact that you can bring something to life. And you being a natural artist, I'm sure you've also heard of 32 degrees. Yes. But also, recently we went to Githoro and we heard of this place just for artists. No, the island. Yes, the art island. That's fine. I like what artists are doing. They're braver now. The understanding that commercial art that they knew, which is very much what is sold in Europe and Americas, I suppose, is paintings and things like that. But from where you stand, and that's why I'm saying that context matters. Where you live in Africa, when someone has the basic needs to think about, it's not like we don't enjoy art. We always loved it. But it has to be practical. It's not something they look at on a wall as a picture. It has to be useful as well. You understand? Which is why my push for murals was to make sure that people could actually create consumable art. When we worked with the World Art Society at the very beginning, it's a collective of artists. I was explaining that to them. I'm not looking for paintings to put on walls that I can move. Those are small pieces and You've seen them everywhere else. I need an entire wall
Yeah.
that speaks, that has life. That way, it becomes the identity of a place. But beyond that, the place becomes self-advertising. Because how people then start using that wall differently. Everyone comes there, will use it for content,
And
people
they'll
will
come
take
in
pictures, come in their own car. All you're doing is setting a stage for them.
Yeah.
And then you will see what actually happens. And that's what I've always loved about consumable art, let's say. Fashion is consumable art. And so is now like what they've created at the Art Island.
Yeah.
That's consumable because I can live in it.
Yes. It's beautiful.
It's very gorgeous. I do believe artists have understood that moving forward.
Yeah.
Not everyone is just trying to carry their art and then take it to Europe. You have a local market here. They can consume this art, but then they will consume it in a very different way. You need people to be repeat clients. I will not come to look at the same painting every day, but I can come to take a picture from a mural every other day because it will look different. I can come in a different shirt. I will come in different shoes. It will be different every single time. You've created a stage for me. You understand? But you see now, like the influences of things like graffiti in Europe were more political. It was always to make a statement of some sort, and it was so politicized.
Yeah.
Here, what we have done with murals is soften them up and make them friendly to the public so that the public can actually interact with art. You don't have to buy the art, but you can interact with it every day. As long as you're interacting with it, someone is benefiting somewhere. Whether it is the people that are consuming your content or the space that you're standing in, because it will get more traction. Some other people will find ideas of how they want to use it. They have shot music videos in these spaces. People have done dance videos in front of some of this art. And for me, that's what I find as giving value to art in Africa.
I love that. I also feel like we are appreciating it more, especially if you travel and then you see all this different art and then you think, oh, this is also very beautiful. You see also now a lot of artists from Uganda appreciated in like art festivals.
Exactly.
And then you think, oh, we have something going on, you know? We have the heroes within us. But then we wait for them to be exalted abroad, but that's fine as long as we realize it today and find the beauty in it just as it is. So that is very nice to hear also how you appreciated the different artists who are being brave. I couldn't find a better word as well. I feel like before we probably lived not in fear, but just fear for the unknown. We weren't sure what could be of our passions or the possibilities. We weren't sure. So then you think, okay, let me take the usual path that people take. But I'm glad that people are taking these different routes and leading them where they are today. I mean, I don't know what year that was, but when they first auctioned the first AI art piece, was it? I wonder how we're using technology here in Uganda. Today, you go to those events and people are using iPads and you have drawn with your hands in black and white, like you said from the start. I don't know what we're using here that is different that we could leverage to our own advantage.
AI is a tool. It's like everything else. It's a more advanced tool because it picks up information so fast and brings it back to you. So then you don't have to spend so much time sitting and then doing your own research to do something. I think it's a good thing. And a lot of people think that it will replace. No, there's no replacement.
Good luck.
Yeah, in 99, that's what we said about the internet. And now everyone uses it for a lot more. And the world has become such a big place and there's so much more money in the world because of the internet. Of course, it is leading us to a whole other place. But that said, people are afraid of what they don't know until they experience what you can actually do with it. That's the beauty about the human brain. If I give you this room and I give it to 10 other people and ask them what they can do with it, every single person will come up with a different idea. And that's what we need to understand, that you're given a tool like AI tools, what people use them for is very different. For example, myself, I use it to organize my entire business and office. These are things where you had to consult like 10 different people, and then it's not even about just paying them. Problem was not understanding you. You're asking someone to do something for you. They don't understand what you're talking about. When I said I want to do a design and build company, you're going to get all this resistance and someone telling you cannot do both. You shouldn't do both. Because they assume that specialization is a thing. It shouldn't be. You can do multiple things at the same time. One of the best things that AI has brought is like I can multitask. I'll get the design concept, cost it. I come up with the design itself in terms of developing it. I will do a feasibility study on it. I will check where it has been used before. I will simulate different scenarios and know what is the best actual scenario, because ideally I have the best knowledge to decipher. It doesn't do it for you. You prompting it to do what you want and iterating until you get exactly what you're looking for. But you can do things that you would have spent months doing, paying people, following them up and calling them, and they're not answering your phone calls. You just do it in one day.
So it's working for you artists.
It does, big time. So I think that people need to understand that even a client who wants to explain to you a concept, they'll go to AI and then they can come back to you with it because they can see it now. And when they give it to you to develop, they already don't have to explain so much. You know how someone cannot explain to you what they're trying to say?
Language.
That's it. I have an idea and I want to put it up, but I do not know how to explain it. Put it in an AI, it gives you some samples. Once you see what you want, you come back with it. And that was a good thing about Pinterest as well. Because then people could say, okay, fine, I've seen what I was looking for. But you've traveled somewhere, you never took a picture, and you come back and say, I saw this in Italy and I want to do something similar. But I don't know. I've never been there. When you talk about technology and how it's helping artists, that's one of the ways. The other way, obviously, is one of the best things that ever happened to artists, social media.
Okay.
Being able to give them a platform, because remember before, they had to beg to be in newspaper just for space and to be able to express yourself.
Yeah.
Right now, you have a platform where you can put everything. People will choose for themselves what's good and what's not. But before, there were gatekeepers. And what social media did was start removing a lot of gatekeepers. They will always be there. But the idea is privatizing that space, but also letting people just be able to freely express themselves. It's so good for them.
That's true. When I was at uni, I used to sell crafts, and every weekend we used to sell at Uganda. I would make t-shirts and kitenge dresses and skirts and things like that. But this guy used to exhibit with, he's called JB, he's a very big artist. And I was telling him about this lady I know. And he's like, I can exhibit anywhere on my social media. People will buy from Europe, they'll invite me to shows. So I agree with you.
It opens you to the world.
Yeah.
The idea is that once you're doing something good, it is undeniable. It is undeniable. It will take one person to people, and then after a short while, you will actually grow. And it takes that one moment where you have a viral thing, and then from there, it's up to you to ride the wave.
Is it a big deal? The opportunists, are they big in this art industry? Or you wouldn't call them opportunists?
They're there. There's people who are freeloaders. They want ideas. You sit here, you speak about an idea, and the very next day, someone with a means will set it up. No one owns an idea until there's a result. There are people who are set up that way. They just like sitting and then listening to others, but they can never actually do anything for themselves.
I always feel anyone can take your idea, but the execution
will
always be different.
And for me, it's not even a competition. One of the greatest things about being an artist is that it is in your head.
Yes. It is
in your head.
Own it.
It's intellectual property, and you can repeat it, and you can change it, and you can create something new. People give up as soon as they see an idea being done by someone else. People will always be there. Someone will steal your mirrors off the car. At some point, you're going to have to buy them, even if you feel bad. So, artists, it's good that they're emotional, but it's also terrible that they cannot go past a lot of things. They don't think business, they don't think practical ways of doing things. You have to keep your feelings in check in order for you to be a successful one. Being able to understand that if something doesn't work, you move on to the next one. There's always the next thing to do. But dwelling on what hasn't worked, that's what keeps people in certain bad places.
I had someone on a podcast, but it was about artists being the artist. People need managers to promote the art. So there has to be a differentiation of the two. Otherwise, if someone just wants to roll with it the whole time, then people won't buy into it. That's true.
That's why they call them starving artists. Mainly because they dwell so much on the art and they forget the commercialization aspect to it. Everyone has to eat, everyone has to be paid, everyone has to live. When you create art for the sake of art, unless you're a philanthropist and you already have a lot of money and someone worked for you, you have inherited, you have to make money some way. Now, what we forget, we tend to read about the famous artists, but they're only famous artists because someone made them. It was a commercial investment. What used to happen was that most of these artists that we talk about, the Michelangelos, they were commercialized, and that's why they're world famous. It's not because they did the most gorgeous. It's because someone says, this is so good, and then they keep pushing it down your throats until you believe that, okay, this is the best. But have you ever seen any African artist who has been pushed like that? Because for us, we never used to commercialize our art. It was ceremonial, it was for the kings, it was never something we sell to people. It had to be practical in some ways. So we have never had that very extremely commercial aspect. We never had patrons.
Yeah.
Most of Europe is built around patrons. It had to be a rich person who says that I am commissioning you to do a ceiling somewhere, and then that art lives on for life because someone paid for it. You need people who have extra cash to be able to invest in artists in order for artists to create their best work. But as long as an artist is starving, they're just creating just so that you can get the next paycheck.
Yeah.
I wish there was a lot more patronage in Uganda, in Africa in general. That's how you would get very quality work, because someone can be in residency and know that someone has paid $1 million and I have to create this. So I'm not thinking about money, I'm now thinking about the work itself.
So that's an opportunity.
That is an opportunity.
I feel like if there's still a young listener who is watching or listening and they're still confused, what are these people talking about? Or there's an investor who just wants to understand the ecosystem, or a Ugandan investor, people with their money, they're there. You talked about them, they have their money, but they don't know where to put it. Where is the opportunity?
Okay, so the opportunity is twofold. One is that you have artists who are working as solo runners. There's an opportunity in managing those artists.
Yeah.
The problem is that usually managers come in and they're exploitative because they're not the artists themselves. But if you create a structure that is very, very well managed, art makes money. Creating a society, creating a collective means that you have so many different artists coming under one wing, and they're able to manage everything between themselves. Finances, breakdown of work between each other. So that is in itself is an opportunity for growth.
Yeah.
And you pull each other up. As long as you're not doing very well, someone else is doing something, you're able to deliver work on time. As a single artist, you can't take on so many jobs because you're literally the person doing the work.
Although I know some creatives, some editors or videographers who just want to take the gig alone, and they're happier that way because they're being frustrated with working with other people. Yeah, some are exceptionals.
But all these relationships are nurtured. You have to actually build it into a professional setup where there are actual expectations. You cannot say that I gave this guy something to edit for me and he never did it, and then there are no consequences. There have to be consequences. That is what forces people to be in companies, because you were supposed to deliver something, you haven't done it, there is a consequence. Artists never do that. They work on ideas. Well, no, he's my friend. Moods change and the person may just not be in the mood to work, and then what happens? You're already committed. At the end of the day, you're the only like. So being able to create different collectives and formalizing them into actual working spaces is one of the opportunities that we need to look into. That's the very first one. The second, of course, patrons. There's always people, like I said, with extra cash who are willing to say, let's do this. Now, I consider myself a patron because I decided that every single space that I did, I would include murals as part of the design.
Okay.
By doing that, I'm basically saying I'm putting aside a budget for artists for them to showcase.
I just found out recently that you can even have augmented reality to change the murals, or we're sticking to the ones that are static.
Even architectural spaces. So for me, I give ideas freely. If you come to me for a consult, I'll give you free information because, I mean, I keep it to myself and then watch. Yeah, so not everything is about money. At the end of the day, if I've given you an idea and helped you explore it and then you execute it, I'm happy it has been executed because I don't believe that one person can execute everything. That's the essence of what patronage is. It's not about me putting my name on it. It's about creating an opportunity for you to move a step closer to whatever you are planning to do with your life. So my idea of artists was always that you don't have money or you're not paid enough because you're choosing the wrong way of approaching things. The people you're going to they don't appreciate the art as much as you think they do. And they're not willing to pay for it because they don't know the value of it. But if you put it in a public space where it is useful to an organization can create the budget you need that an individual could never. And it can also cut across, because if you look at all the spaces that have come up in Kampala with murals, just think about how many artists. You go checking the signatures, many artists, but it also validated so many people's thought processes. Because if you go through many parts of Uganda, you'll find big murals now on buildings.
Yeah.
I don't believe that is a second opportunity. There's a whole lot more ways of doing some of these things.
And we're thinking about the artists themselves. Like you said, they don't have to be stuck to one thing. They could do quite a lot more with their art, which is always beautiful. Now, I wonder what kind of challenges they're facing now and some solutions you have come up with the Bronze Stage.
Because for me, I never look at challenges. I look at them as opportunities. The fact that there is a problem means that the solution either pays me or creates a whole other channel of my creativity, so to speak. The biggest challenge, of course, with artists is in their failure to work together. Numbers matter, and what I hope for them is that we will learn that they have the same goals. Once they figure that part out, and once they figure out that as a group, they have even more bargaining power. Because I can't trust one guy with a certain project because considering it may fail. It's the same thing with, let's say, like construction companies. If you've never done a project that is worth $1 million, there is not a company in the world that will give you a project until you find a person who just trusts you. But even those people who trust you with that, they're willing to lose that $1 million. They're just betting on you, but they know it could go a different way. But once you deliver, then all of a sudden you've gone to another step. Artists need to understand that there's always someone willing to believe in you, even if they know they're going to make a loss. That person is the one that you need to be able to look for. You may not look for them, but they watch, they see, they trust you by seeing you being able to do certain things. Particularly for me, what's helped is the fact that I was trusted with certain big projects even when I was much younger. But it's because I was always fighting to make sure the thing actually happens. I could lose money, I would lose time, but I would make sure as much as possible that I hit 100% of that thing that I've been given to do.
Yeah.
That way you find that as you're growing older, you're growing with the same people. One of the things that artists need to understand is that they are growing with the people that they were in school with, or they have been in the same circles.
Yeah.
So,
and people do business with people they know.
that is it. And that's why you find generations uplift the same generation. You won't find an old guy trying to give a young guy that opportunity. There are very few of those guys. But as these young guys start growing up, there are certain things that we never talk about, but they're a reality.
Yeah.
Someone young can have money only because they inherited it. They are able to have a certain level of comfort at a younger age. And people work for it, but when you're younger, it's much harder, obviously. If you're doing a normal job, let's say, for you to accumulate the same amount of wealth as your parents. And in Europe, people have a lot more money than their older people. Because the older people did, those manual jobs.
They were working hard.
People have done a lot of investment banking, trading. Yeah. So the population is inverted in terms of who has money. Here in Uganda, the older people have money because they have worked longer. They have worked much longer. They have saved. They are retired. So you have to understand where you live.
Yes.
And why things are the way they are. And that's why I was saying that, let's say in Europe, you find that a young person can buy a painting for I don't know how much because they can afford it. It's just pocket change because they have more money. People in Uganda cannot buy that same painting at that ridiculous amount because they'll be like, what am I going to use this thing for? You get it? Those are the realities I'm talking about in terms of understanding context of where you are. Stop comparing yourself to the USA, to Europe, to what you live in Uganda, you live in Africa. Deal with the situation as it is.
So, the very last question we ask on this podcast. Are you ready, Prosper? Yeah. What do you think it's going to take for Uganda to achieve a middle-class economy?
I think we're nowhere there, but I believe that, first of all, the government has to stop working a certain type of way. It has to shift. And the shifts are there, by the way. The truth is that they're actually there. Yeah, but for you as an individual, you can make decisions quite fast. Decisions take too long. But the fact that a lot of younger people are entering government and bringing new ideas in terms of how to approach particular problems, I believe that shift is actually happening on government level in terms of support like innovation spaces, in terms of support for individual innovations, in terms of grants for that kind of work. That shift is actually starting to happen. You can clearly see it in terms of how we communicate to each other and incentives that help the public. For me, I believe that As long as you build the infrastructure, the same way that I said, as long as you give people a stage, you give them mural, they can do so much with it. As long as that infrastructure is in place, people have electricity, the internet is getting faster, you have avenues for channeling out creativity, you have more creative spaces. There's more roads going everywhere. If I can go to home and back, it means that I can do work almost anywhere in the country.
Oh, did it have to be very specific?
Using that as an example. I mean, travel across the country so much by road. I drive everywhere. And because of that, I've seen the fundamental changes that have come from stuff like that. If you move around this country, you'll see things shifting. Now, those things shifting, especially like these infrastructure projects, whether it's dams, bridges and roads, they are creating more connectivity. Because of that, it allows creativity to just flow much faster, much more easily. So we have to credit people for some of these things. They may come a bit later than they should, especially because we live in a country where you have to balance budgets, both on a personal level and the national level. So that's what I think one of the bigger influences of this middle income thing is going to be. Because then it allows resources to flow much more easily.
And I like that you think about the creative. Even in mobility, think about the creative mind.
Because that's what changes things. If you look at a car, the look of that car, the design of that car is done by an artist. I'm fascinated by objects, by the design of objects and microphones, how they look. It's enough to make you buy it. So what I'm trying to say is that infrastructure helps artists a lot. It helps the movement of creative energy between spaces. It allows more people to invest in those areas for growth. Like the Innovation Village, we built regional ones as well for the same exact reason. You carry a person from Kampala, he teaches people in Gulu, and then they start understanding the value of these spaces.
That's wonderful. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially with the infrastructure. You think about the creative 24/7, which is good.
It's a good thing.
Our very last thing on this podcast, we're going to have a rapid fire question. You'll tell us what we're doing at the moment that won't get us in the middle class. What you hope a middle class will look like. Just 3 points. So, what is currently not middle class about us?
What's not middle class about us is unhealthy competition. That's the very first thing. You just want to take out your neighbor. Second is importation of ideas instead of nurturing local talent in order for ideas to actually be developed into something nicer. And third, I believe capital flow. People have the money, we just don't know how to unlock it. Every time we talk about an investor, our minds go outside. Like, there's people here that you can convince to do something with. They're not easy to work with. I've experienced that sometimes you have to understand that you can actually use local money to build.
What does middle class look like?
What my middle class looks like is not the pretentious one that we have at the moment. Being bougie is not what makes you middle. Having all the basics of my life is middle class. And then, having access to good education. You have a very educated group of people who need to understand that their education is a privilege, but it is one of the biggest investments. Use that education. Just stop being funny.
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power. Use it. Here, you will be so shocked at what you can do. People don't even use the education. And education is everything from street smart to these office jobs that you get. There's so many ways.
Some people say, you could be street smart. Don't have an education.
Education is a very big thing. It's a key factor because what education does is it doesn't just teach you science and math. It teaches you how to deal with people. It teaches you how to deal with anger issues. It teaches you how to deal with the outside world. It teaches you so much more. That's what education is. Being able to float within a system and make it work.
Always tell people, I'm shocked at how much information people carry in their heads. You just move around with all this knowledge. And I'm always sort of blown away with all this information. And I'm much better having conversations with people like you. So thank you so much for making time. You could have been doing something else this afternoon, but you decided to come to the Patriots and share your insights. One last word for the Patriots 2026.
Build your country. No one will do it for you.
What a wonderful way to end the podcast on Uganda. I love it. Build your country because no one will do it for you.